Okay, so what I was going to say is, so we have close this. So Monday there's no school, a week from Monday, so 1 week from today. So Wednesday we do meet. And so what that means is you might want to look ahead on your chapter work because your deadlines don't change. Let's just review your deadlines right now, just for starters, so you know where we're at, and then I'll tell you how the day is going to look. So Wednesday, as in the day after tomorrow, you have Chapter 2 and Chapter 3 due. Okay, so all the work for those 2 chapters. Don't fall behind, because is there late work in this class? No. Okay. And if you submit the work early and you want John or I to grade it, email John and I. Flag it for us. You know, John and I both work outside of class. This is where we give you all our attention. We don't do this 24/7. It's not, you know, full time. And so if you want us to grade your work because you believe that you've completed it perfectly, then flag it, email both of us, not in pipeline. We each have our own emails. We'll grade it as fast as we possibly can and give you feedback, and you can delete the old one, resubmit the new one before the window closes. Okay? Olivia?
Yeah. What is John's email?
John Lemon at cox.net. I think he put it on the Q&A, but John Lemon at cox.net. And mine's on the homepage, Victoria at victoriatowatch.com. And John is a stickler for details, I will tell you. He will look at most of your exercises because there's no subjectivity in it, which means do exactly what you see. Just do exactly what you see. I recommend that you follow the directions, look at the work, learn to focus on it. I think I mentioned this to you before. And then when you're all done with it, you might even want to take the PDF file, student handout, the example, put it behind the artwork you created so it's like see-through. You can see how it looks on top of one another and see if your alignment is pretty close. That should probably get you there pretty accurately. I will show you. It is not a stupid question whatsoever. It's a great question. John is really, I always talk about John at the beginning of the semester. John's wonderful. John will help you till his dying day. He's wonderful. He will give you support till his dying day. He has created, and I say this because I don't necessarily agree with this approach. He has created these templates for you that you open in InDesign, and he's already created this layer for you so you don't have to figure it out yourself. And I'll show you how to find it, and I'll also show you how to do it so you know. But my preference is, because let's face it, when you design stuff, nothing's going to be, you're the designer. You're going to dictate what it looks like, okay, when you design stuff. There are some situations where you have to be very precise with measurements, type, and so forth. There's sometimes criteria. Even some professors you have ask you to type term papers with specific spacing and margins and point sizes and leading, don't they? I've heard this, yes? So knowing this stuff is good for you, right? But I will show you. I will demo that when I get into demoing, so remind me, okay? All right, any other questions come up just to flag things for you? Don't fall behind on these exercises. The truth is it's a lot of work for you, but just stay with them. Just stay with them. The beginning of the semester is a lot of work and it goes super fast, but it's because we want to lay down all the practical applications of the software so you can move forward in other areas, okay? And Susan asked me this morning to talk to you about, can you all see what's behind me here? Okay, she asked me just to review for you the process book, which is your end of the semester project. And what I want to do is talk to you about backup work again. Do not forget to back up all your work, because for many of you in the class, if you don't want to make your process book about something unique, but want to keep it about this class and the process of learning in this class and make the book itself unique to you. I do want that. I want the book unique to you. But you have all the content. You're all semester long. You're building the content with your files and your PDF documents. You're building the content. So at the end of the semester, you don't say, what do I put inside the book? You've got it, right? And then you can just build the book. So you should hopefully have all the content and the skills to build the book. So back it up, back it up, back it up. Is anybody struggling with how to back things up? Okay, all right, good. There's this link here. So I clicked on the home page. Down here it says now the process book, right? Now, pay attention to it, never too soon. And it takes you to this page right here. And I created a link of something called Cargo Collective, which is not process books from this class at all. It's process books from any class. And the point is I found them creative and interesting. And they get posted all the time. And you click around on this and look at people's process books. Let's look at this person's next image. There's 11 pages. So this looks like the back side of the process book, so it looks out of sequence to me, but all right, here's the front side. And you might notice here, so here's a book, and it was clearly hand bound. When you put staples, you'll learn this. When you create a book and you put staples here, right? Everybody knows that? That's called saddle stitching. Literally, in book manufacturers, they run a wire through the spine of the book, and it looks like a staple to us, but it's literally stitched with wire and cut, and it's what the machinery does. So that's called saddle stitching because it sits on a saddle, on something shaped like this, like a roof, and the paper goes through it, and the wire sews through it and looks like a staple, saddle stitching. Well, the only reason I'm calling attention to it is this student bound their book themselves and stitched it obviously with string or embroidery, which is kind of cool. And I've never looked at this, so they're a surprise to me. So the idea of the process book is there's two options for your process book. Let me come back to this page. Well, let's just finish clicking through this, just for fun. Actually, this is a good page to stop on. The idea of the process book is twofold. You have two choices for your process book, your final semester project. One is very straightforward. You create a book, it's many pages, 16, 20, 24, 32. They're all divisible by 4. They need to be divisible by 4. I've had books over 100 pages before. It's up to you. It can be any size. It could be the size of your hand. It could be this kind. It could be a back pocket book, right? It can be a coffee table book. And it's up to you. It's your book. Whatever inspires you, whatever is authentic for you, even if the book is about this class. So the process book is designed to show me you know how to work with type, leading, kerning, which you're going to learn about today. You're going to learn how to set up your master pages. You're going to learn how to work with images and place images. You're going to learn how to work with color. You're going to learn how to set things up for facing pages like your textbook facing pages. We talked about that once before. Who's got a textbook? Just hold up your notebook right there and open a page. See how those two pages face each other? Facing pages, that's what that means. Thank you. And what you're going to do, and you're going to create a table of contents, you're going to put page numbers, and you're going to learn through the semester how to do this. I'll show you. I'll demo it. I'll demo it again. I'll demo it again. You're going to work with grid layouts or something like that. What you might want to do to get ready for creating the process book, no matter what your subject is to look at books that you like. If you're at a bookstore, if anybody goes to a bookstore anymore, if you're at a bookstore, snap a photo of a book you like. Buy the book you like. If you're at a friend's house and they have some cool book, take note of what intrigues you about the book. So for example, if we look at the previous image, what might intrigue you about the layout of the book behind me here is that it's so clean. There's nothing going on that page. Big type, big font, funky font that looks bitmapped. and a very clean name. And notice the name, the letters are spread out. That's called tracking. I'll demo that today, as a matter of fact, because we're talking about type today. But then you look at this page and you're saying, oh, let's see. Let's talk about how this breaks down. I know you can't see it, but you can click here on your own. So this probably is telling you, this text, I don't know if you can see it in the back, I can't see it on the screen here, but this text is probably, let me turn the light off even more so you can see better. My guess is this is a chapter introduction. So whoever created this book, chapter 1, took the font that we saw on 1, 2, 3, 4, wasn't it? And enlarged it, kept it chunky still, made out of squares. It's probably a font they downloaded off of dafont.com, I'm guessing. That's a free site where you download fonts. We'll have to talk about working with those. Then they set up small type, flush left with a margin, and probably talks about the contents of that chapter, let's say. They knew how to place a background image that has a bleed off the edge of the page. They knew how to create this inside cover and the right-hand first page of the chapter. They have what's called a pull quote in all uppercase letters. They have a block of text here, flush left. This is actually a conversation we're going to have today with our lecture, so it's kind of good. This will be considered what a pull quote, not necessarily a headline, but it's larger, so it might be considered a headline. Here's a block of text which looks like a quote with an attribution of the person who said this. The text is set up flush left, ragged right, right? There is, somebody wrote this to me and I don't remember who wrote it. There is space after this paragraph. Notice there's a space here, and then the attribution for the quote. Who asked me about space after? In here? Out here? Emailed me? Okay. And then notice they indented this block, this paragraph block. So this could be one text box from top to bottom. It's lined up on a grid. Everything lines up here. This is maybe justified the full width of the column. This is flush left. This has space after to here. This paragraph indents over, I don't know, let's make up a number, 2 inches. This is flush left text, same size as that, but this one's black, ragged right, space after the paragraph, huge space after the paragraph, till we get to whatever this says here, and that little tag there, right? And there's nothing dictating what your pages should look like. Again, this designer, which is probably a student, right, kept a consistent margin, which personally makes me uncomfortable because it's close to the edge of the page, but consistent margin, ragged text, bold text, same point size as that, larger space after. These are things you're going to start to pay attention to. Caption for the photos, smaller text, place images. That's what your job's going to be. And some of these might be chaotic pages. And notice, this would be beautiful because it's got continuity. They started the chapter headers on the left hand. My recommendation is generally chapter headers start on the right-hand page. But notice, the number 2 is in the exact same location as it was for chapter 1. The consistency is they have a full-page bleed image like they did for chapter 1. They have the same content in the same location for what is for chapter 2. They have the headline in the same location. They indented this body text, same thing. And the red used to sit up here, and now they made it sit down here because it made sense to them, right? So these are the kinds of things you're going to observe when you see a book and see what you like. And notice, again, grid layouts. They set up their text, same margin. They just ran their images all the way across the page. It's a grid. We'll talk about grids later in the semester. Captions for this, right? You start to observe it. You can see how they stitched it themselves, right? So the whole reason you have cargo collection is just for you to get inspired. Look at what people do, see what you like. This is very straightforward. But that would be the goal of the semester. Probably too short. Bless you. Probably too short. I don't know how many pages we went through, but it might be a little too short. But you can poke through all of these and come up with what you like. Here's a busy book. This is called Perfect Binding. Bless you. When you have a paper cover and a certain thickness. And we'll talk about this all semester long. It's just Susan wanted a little overview. Here's another book that looks hand-bound. Oh, I have one of these books. This is actually a die-cut notch out of each page. Hard to do, but super cool. Some books get rubber banded there instead of tied with string. So be on the lookout for books that are attractive to you, and then find out, take pictures of them, and you'll come to see you have kind of a personal aesthetic you might not have necessarily thought about before. And the second part of the process book, if you're not making it about the class, is you might make it about something that interests you, that you might have a huge passion about. Let's look at that page. I can't enlarge it. Oh, well. You might have a huge passion about. You know, for example, some of you are into photography, or some of you are into cooking, or some of you are into traveling, or some of you, what are you into?
Traveling.
Traveling. Me too. Okay, so for me, let's say I was going to make a travel book because that was my interest. That means perhaps today, starting at the beginning of the semester, I might choose either to make a travel book about what I have done, right? Where I have been. Each chapter is a different trip with images from the trip, maps from the trip, scans of tickets from the trip, photographs from my handwritten journal. When my daughter was younger and she and I would travel together, we would bring a journal with us, and we didn't write in our journals necessarily. We brought a ton of markers and scissors, and we paste our plane tickets in there because we would never do it when we went home, right? But we would do it while we were kind of regrouping at 2 a.m. after being out way too late and trying to wind down. And we paste our tickets to the museum, and we draw silly pictures of whatever it is we did with a little narrative. So we'd remember, we'd trigger our memory of what we did. And then, of course, we're photo addicts. So the scrapbook part, and it wasn't necessarily a scrapbook, but the journal part, which is an accumulation of things, was not the photo part. And then we'd come home and we'd make an iBook, photo book, or something like that, which were two different things. But your book, since you're working in InDesign, might be your plane tickets, a map of your travels, the subway map, the highlights that you photographed on the trip, photographs of you traveling, photographs of sites, and that might be each chapter. Or if you long to travel and you've never been anywhere, you might have a chapter book on where you wish to go, and each chapter might be where you wish to go. Or you might make a book on the 20 things you want to do before you're 40. And you make it, I see your hand, hang on a sec, and you make it, you know, I want to go hang gliding, I want to go skydiving, I want to ski the Alps, I want to go fishing off the end of the Santa Barbara Pier, I want to go ice fishing with my new friend I made in Graphic Design Basics in Sweden, right? I want to dig a hole and go ice fishing. And it can be anything. It can be anything. I think I mentioned the first day I had students who love to surf. They did all the cool surf spots they've traveled to. It can be anything you want. But what makes the books fun and wonderful is if you're passionate about it. What makes the books wonderful is if you have more than text and photos. You can't steal photos off the internet for this. You cannot, because you will not find photographs that will be high enough resolution to print from. Rarely. Tony said, I remember your conversation, Tony. Tony earlier said, show them how to find high resolution images. You can find some on the internet, but you'll be surprised. Even the highest resolution off the internet will yield a very small photo when it's print quality. And we get into that information about halfway into the semester, so you know what's required of you. So I can't see you back there, so tell me your name, please. Linus. Stealing photos off the internet? Yeah, your hand went down at that one. Was that it? Yeah. Okay. You can't. What do I want to say? Susan brought up this conversation with us before, not in this class, but in a previous class, right? And you are stealing photos off the internet if you steal them off the internet, unless you go to a site like Flickr or something like that, where I think they're royalty free. You can use them as you wish. And most photos that get uploaded to the internet are very low resolution, and you'll come to learn that when you scale them for printing, they become the size of a postage stamp. So taking your own photos would be amazing. I'll show you later in the semester stock photography sites. I'll show you places that you can get free high-resolution images. But that's why I like you to start thinking about it now, because if you have a passion for something you're interested in, start grabbing your own photos or grab your own brochures or catalogs. You can scan them. You'll learn how to do that and then work with them at the right resolution. So I don't want to spend too much time on this. I just want to kind of fuel your interest because we've talked about it before. But I'm happy to answer any questions about it. No? Not any? All right. So just put that little seed in your head. You're probably, I tell you in the beginning of the semester so you could start today on it. You don't have to start laying it out, but you could start accumulating materials for it. But I still find everybody waits until the night before. And I will tell you that you can't wait till the night before, because I will show you sites where you can make a hardbound book called blurb.com, or you can make an iPhoto book, all doing this through InDesign. And they take a couple weeks to print and ship, so there's no way you can wait till the night before, or the week before, or the day before. It really is a huge project, and so we'll start on it in class. I'll start demoing it probably after the midterm, so you can start building it, and we'll amp it up pretty strongly come week 9, 10, 11. Okay? No other questions? All right, good. So you can go to these sites whenever you want to take a look, and you can look at the criteria and read through all of this for what's expected. But I think you got a pretty good handle on it right now. So let me come back here. Did I get kicked out of my pages? Let's try this. There we go. All right. So what I'd like to do today is this. I'd like to talk about our type and fonts lecture, and then I'll demo whatever you need help with on any of your chapter work. Okay? Does that help you out? Alrighty. So let's talk. Well, let's just talk about this because this is fun. This will get you into a happy little mood. So let me pause. Okay. So the video is good on font personality. So everybody understood dingbats, mailbox, webdings. Okay. All right. That's good. So there's a website down here called Counterspace, which I would love for you to play with on your own. I'm kind of enamored with it, to tell you the truth, but I get enamored with all kinds of strange things. And this is all about type, because letters have shape and structure, and I am a purist when it comes to type, because type was designed by a person, a designer, and they designed letter forms as art, that each letter form relationship, how one letter sits next to another letter, matters. So every font has perfect integrity. So I cringe when people do something called style fonts, where you take a font that only comes in fine line, fine weight, and you bold it, and then you stretch it. That's like, it's like putting a dagger in my heart, right? It changes the integrity of a font. So there are so many fonts out there. As a designer, it's your responsibility to find a font that communicates the personality you wish to communicate, even if that personality is subtle. And fonts have an anatomy, they have a structure, and the reason I think this is so much fun is because you get to learn what that little bottom thing is on that cue when you roll your mouse over it, which is, it's the tail of the letter form. Or if you want to know what the stem of a letter form is, you might roll your mouse right here over the uppercase E, and it tells you what the stem is and what defines it, that it's the most distinct vertical stroke or closest to the vertical in the type character. Or for example here, what the arm is, or right here, what the beak is, because everything has terminology. And we don't get very deep into this terminology. Let's go find the bowl. I think this will get us the bowl. Oh, that's the loop. Here's the loop. And let's roll ourselves. Let's find bowl. There's bowl. There's a bowl. So we don't get very much into the terminology of the fonts, but it's important to know that they have a name. So when we refer to a font called a serif, the serif is this extension, right? It's like a tail on the fonts. And serif fonts are formal fonts, like Times Roman. It's a serif font. And it's got a formality to it. But it does something else. Having this right here runs your eye across the page. So when you have serifs that carry your eye across the page, you'll notice most newspapers are created through serif fonts. And you can look at what a cross stroke is. Here's the cross stroke. You can just roll over. It's fun to play with, right? What the finial is, the little tip. Finials are the things that go on the top of lamps, right? You know what I'm talking about? That holds the shades together. Those are called finials. Well, here's a font, a letter form finial. Or the spur. It's the kick on the backside right there. So learning terminology is fun, important. If you're going to be a designer, you're going to need to know it. If you move further into the typography class, you'll want to know it. Ear. There's your ear. So here's your apex, right? Kind of fun to play with. So do play with this website. There's also a site here called Thinking with Type. Chances are if I've put a link on here, it's because I love the link. I mean, obviously there's zillions of them. This is somebody's blog about type, and they talk about letters with all the terminology, the anatomy, the size, the shape, the scale. I'll give you an overview of that pretty quickly. But they also talk about terminology, which we'll cover today, called kerning. And kerning is the adjustment of the space between two letters. And right here, for example, different type space, different spacing, like in InDesign, you have what's called metric kerning, which means every letter has its own little metric box it sits in. But if you tuck, look at this W here under the arm of the T, see that? And look at the W here under the arm of that T. That's because they adjusted the space between the T and the W. That would be called kerning. So this site's really fun to look at. It goes very deep into type, and let me back up in it a little bit. It has beautiful, when you get into your process books, we'll end up talking about something called grids, how you align pages and so forth. So this site helps you as a designer understand things. So even when you're no longer referring to your book or working in InDesign, you can have all these resources that are terrific to have in aligning things. And you'll come to notice that probably the books you like either are, you're going to have a design style where you either like a super plain, airy, open space, white space aesthetic, or you might like complete chaos. Even in complete chaos, designers use grids because it helps make the chaos understandable. And I'll show you examples of that throughout the semester. But so go to these resources and let's just talk very simply about type basics, which is probably way too obvious for you, which is, for example, as we talked about earlier, just by looking at that process book sample, there's a hierarchy to how we read pages, how you read a newspaper magazine page. And it's that hierarchy and sense of order that lets us understand what we're going to read. If every page of a textbook looked different font, different arrangement, different alignment, different type colors, different sizes, it would be chaotic for you. It wouldn't have a predictability. And one of the things that we enjoy when we read books for pleasure is we know we've got a rhythm to the pages, a rhythm to the type, a rhythm to turning the pages, a rhythm to the sequence, the order. We know how to predict it. If we look at our textbook and you open the pages on the right-hand side, I've called attention to you before about the captions, the sidebars. And I've said pay attention to them because they have great details and fun tips and lots of very practical information. Well, now you know that when you read your textbook, the chapter header is always on the right. It's got that big number. It's got a quote from a designer. You turn the page. It gives you your content. It gives you your tips. There's a predictability to it. There's a hierarchy. There's a headline telling you what you're going to read. There's a subhead defining it even more succinctly. And then there's a paragraph of what you read, right? Everybody knows that, whether you think you know all this design terminology or not. Same thing, you might not have known that you were talking about serif faces or sans serif faces, sans meaning without serif. But different fonts, coming to learn the different fonts as you do your exercises can help you become more familiar with fonts. There's an exercise called identifont.com. Yeah, I think I showed you that. And happy to show you again if you forgot. But it helps you start to observe fonts. And learning the names of fonts so you know what you want to use when you design something becomes important. Generally, when you design something, you're only going to want to design with one and a maximum of 2 font families, because a font family might have a dozen faces in that family. I have an avant-garde font, which is a sans serif font, and the avant-garde font has like 12 weights of the font, and some are condensed, and some are expanded, and some are bold, and some are extra light, and some are heavy, right? And then it also has everything. This font has italic fonts, and they call them oblique, which is the same thing, italic, slanted. So you can get a huge variety from a font family. And sometimes, for example, I might use my headline fonts as a sans serif font, and then use a serif font if I have a lot of body copy, because it'll make it easier to read. Or if I design newsletters and they have sidebars, sometimes I'll make the sidebar a sans serif font and flop them. So the headline font is serif and the sidebar might be sans serif font. And you'll come to, as you observe books, you'll come to see what it is you like about it. And type is measured in point sizes. There's 72 points to an inch. And essentially how you would measure a font is you would measure the uppercase E height. Let's see if we come down here. You measure the uppercase E height. No, it doesn't show you. You measure the uppercase E height of a font, which means you take it from the top of the uppercase E to the bottom, and that would tell you the point size of the font. So that's measuring your vertical height. Let me see what else is in here before I demo a couple things in design. We did talk about picas. In one of your assignments, it said to add space after a paragraph, and it also said to make your column width, I think it was like 30 p. P is a pica measurement. It's a column width. It's the width of a column, and that's a unit that we don't usually use for measurement. 6 picas equals 1 inch. 1 pica is 12 points. And this is all type terminology. This is designer terminology, so you're going to need to be familiar with it. And let me see, we'll talk about leading. I'll show you, I'll demo that. But you all remember that little bar of lead spaced in between there, which moved the baseline of the word space and the baseline of the word measured up or down based on that lead, piece of lead that got put in there. That's called leading, line spacing. And then we can talk about type anatomy again, ascenders and descenders. So and X height. I want to remember all these terminology as I come in here. So let's just open InDesign. So I'm in InDesign. There is a workspace called typography, which is pretty sophisticated, but I'll pull it up just so you can see. And you can locate paragraph palettes and character palettes. And then, of course, you have your character formatting controls at the top. And again, you might want to, if you're not familiar with this again, go to InDesign Preferences and make sure your units and increments are measured in inches. But keep in mind that type will be measured in point sizes. So let's see if it's here. Here it is. Other units. Your stroke will be measured in points. And here you'll see 72 points to an inch. And your type is going to default to be measured in points. That's appropriate. So we've done that. I again tell you, before you open a document, make sure your stroke is not active. Make sure it says none. And you can click here to make sure your fill is none. So when you create a box, it doesn't fill up with color that you don't want. And if you make a new document in InDesign, you just go to File, New. And I'm going to turn off facing pages, and I'm going to make this wide for the screen and leave all the default settings alone, just so we can demo a couple things. And again, when you're setting type in InDesign, you probably haven't had to do it by creating a new, oh, you did, for the Ready ad, you had to create a new text box, right? So let me go to my type tool, and again, I'm just going to drag a random size window here using my type tool, and everything goes in a box in InDesign. And there's something here called placeholder text. So I can go to type and fill with placeholder text. You'll probably rarely use that. And it fills it with something called Greeking. When you Greek text, remember my artboards I showed you like the second day of class, you would draw lines and essentially scribbles or bars of lines. And that's Greeking text. That's indicating the size of the type. And it's dummy text. It's so you can start to figure out what point sizes you have. So this is InDesign's way of showing you Greeking or placeholder text. So I'm going to hit, also I'd like you to learn this. In the type panel up here under type, you can show hidden characters, and I like for you to learn how to see those, because if I use my zoom tool right here, it'll show you the hard paragraph return. Because as you build your type in InDesign, knowing where those little dots are for letter spacing and hard returns are important. So if I hold my space bar down with my finger, I'm going to get, whoops, let me click off of this. If I hold my space bar down, I get a hand, which lets me move my page around. Notice it grabs. I can move my page around, and I just want to position this for you. Now, to change type in InDesign, which you probably already know now, you just click and drag and highlight your type, and that's how you can change your font size. But let's talk about type terminology right now. This here is Minion Pro Regular. That's default font in InDesign, and that's a serif font. Let me make it big so you can see it in the back there. It's a serif font. Notice all the tails and the serifs. Here, if I click and drag over the word NAM, I can change this to Helvetica, and I'll pick Helvetica Regular, and that is a sans serif font, no tails. Okay, that's all there is to it. If I type, what was the word? Let's type this. Let's type 2 lives. Was that what that said the other on the screen? I don't remember. It was something like that. Or let's make it. Actually, this is better. I live in Ventura. 2 trees. I have a view of that out of my living room window. And I'm going to make this a serif font. Whoops. So I'm going to type Times Roman. And you could double click in here and not use the pull down and just type Times, and it would start to fill itself in. Like your texting is predictive, this is predictive. And this font, you'll notice up here, if you run your cursor over it, that's kerning. That's what we were talking about. The default is metric kerning. Watch what happens to what I've highlighted when I change it to optical kerning. Optical kerning is what the designer wanted to happen with all the type when it was set up exactly how they designed the font. So how it optically looks best. Yeah? Optical kerning. See how it shifted? See how, watch it again, metric. See how the W is lined up here on the uppercase T, And look what happens to the W in optical kerning. It tucked under the arm of the T. And that's because aesthetically, it looks better. The other thing, watch the W and the O here for 2. Look at that. So right here, this O has its own little space. The W has its own little space. They all have a metric unit that they sit in. When you optically kern it, the O nuzzles up to the W. Watch. See? And aesthetically, in headlines, that's what makes a fine designer, a typographer, a typesetter, versus somebody who's just plunk and type on a page. Like if you download ebooks and they haven't been designed, they've just poured the text into the ebook, you'll notice the difference between fine type design and not fine type design. And as you start to look at books, more high-end books, you'll see lovely type design. You'll start to observe it now that I'm showing it. Now, let's say I want the O to nest a little closer to the W. I click my cursor closer there. Look at the optical kerning was -56. That was what the designer said is optimum for an aesthetic like that. But I might decide that I want it to be -100, more, tighter. And you see how it bumps in there closer? And because I made that one closer, it looks out of balance over here. So I might want to take my W and my T and put my cursor between those. And I can't even go to -100, so I might just type by double-clicking -200 and see what I get. And now I've got a super tightly kerned headline. And you might mess around with this when you're designing logos and you're playing with a type and you know it's going to be large. You're not going to do this to every letter in a book. You'd go a little nuts. You'd probably pick optical kerning. Another thing you can choose to do is I can triple click that paragraph and I can set it to optical kerning. I can also say, you know, that looks really crowded to me. That looks like it's hard to read. It's super dense. Look what happens to this paragraph when I change the leading of it. Actually, let me make it narrower so you can see it better. Look at what happens to the readability of this paragraph when I highlight all this text, and instead of using the default leading, remember I said it's 120% of the point size of the type, and I change it, let's say, to 18 point. It's now at 14.4. That, if you look at that, let's look at it that way. Let's look at it that way. Which would you rather read? More leading or less leading? More leading. So that's your aesthetic. You're the designer, you decide. You might decide that you're making an ad about this. You might decide you're making an ad about renting out an apartment, right? And so you might think that's okay. You might decide that you take this word, you might decide that you take this line here and you want to squish it up because somebody's in a really tiny apartment and you want them to feel crowded. You can go to not kerning every letter, but you can do something called tracking, which will take a whole paragraph of type. Even that first line is considered a paragraph because if I view this in normal mode, there's my paragraph return. So that whole thing is a paragraph. And I can change what's called tracking. And look at, I'm going to go to -100 tracking. There. Isn't that a more effective headline, actually? Need more space, right? Because now you've told them, are you feeling squished in your apartment? Or you might decide that need more space, or you want the word space to be like this. You might decide that you take the word space and you change your tracking to 300. That's what your headline looks like, right? Cool, yeah? So that's called tracking. That's right here. And if I track out this paragraph down here, I can open it up slightly, a little bit, and I find that too hard to read because I don't think there's enough space between each of my lines. So I would probably leave it as optical kerning here, and maybe change the tracking to 10, which adds a little space, not too much. Evan, is that Evan?
Is there a standard font size that they use in like magazines?
Most newspapers are 9-point type on 10-point leading. Most of them. Magazines now are getting bolder. I notice they're using sans serif font. They're less traditional. Most, because your software defaults a 12-point type, you think that's the right size. 12-point type is huge. Huge. If you printed something in 12-point type, it would be huge. It would be like a children's book. That's what it would feel like anyway, especially if you change the leading. I find generally, like I do a product sheet for a client, and I find that the type is most readable at 10-point on 14-point, like that. And I find that, so I would set all this type, for example, 10-point, and different fonts look different. And I would want space. Right now, this is a descender. This is your X height of a letter. The X height of a letter is from the top of a lowercase letter here. I'm pulling a ruler guide from the ruler and dragging him down. This X height, that's called X height. So the C descends a little bit below the baseline, right? The P is a descender. The bottom of the P descends below the baseline. The L, lowercase l, ascends above the X height, right? It's an ascender. That kind of terminology is important to know. And what I might want here is I don't like my descender running into my block of type below, so I'm going to take this paragraph, my headline, and I'm going to go to the paragraph panel here, paragraph formatting controls. I can grab it right here by clicking on that paragraph symbol, or I can go right here to paragraph on the right panel, or I can go to window, type, paragraph, and get that panel. I can tear it off, and I can add right here, look at that, space after the paragraph, so my cursor is floating anywhere in the top line, which is that paragraph, the headline, and I can add space after that paragraph just by clicking incrementally. Or your book might tell you to put in 9 pt space after, which is 1/8 of an inch. I think that's kind of tight, so personally I'd probably do something like that. But you can also take this text here, your whole block of body copy, this would be called body copy, and you can add space after each paragraph. So let me make a hard return in front of this G, and let me make a hard return in front of this M. So I've broken these paragraphs, correct? My type is set up as highlighted all, flush left, here centered. Body copy is never centered. Way too hard to read, ragged sides, right? Flush right, and our language doesn't really read flush right. Different languages do read flush right. Ours isn't very easy flush right. And here's justified type, which goes from margin, goes from frame to frame of the column width, and the bottom line is flush. It's a justified type with it's called justified flush left, which means the last line in the paragraph is going to be flush left, last line in the paragraph centered, last line in the paragraph flush right. Got that? And this is force justified. So look what happens to this. If I make a soft return, which is a shift return, which does not break my paragraph but breaks my line, and I go to force justified, look what happens to that line of type. It spreads all the way out because I've forced it to span the line length of the column. Got that? So let me select all this type here. Let me make it, let's say, flush left, and watch what happens when I add space after each paragraph. So you'll notice I do not have hard returns breaking it. This is a huge no-no that every student's going to do, and I'm going to nail you for it, okay? So most of you, when you want a space after a paragraph, you hit a hard return, and you go here and you hit a hard return, and you go here and you hit another hard return. And that will create a nightmare if that's how you, I see you, hang on a second, okay? That will create a nightmare for you because one day you might have to adjust all of your letter spacing and you're going to have to go locate each of those paragraph returns, and it's a nightmare because there's a control you'll learn later in the semester where you create something called paragraph style sheets, and you can adjust your text throughout an entire book if you've styled it through using like a smart key essentially. You'll learn that, and it'll adjust everything. But if you're accustomed to adding hard returns between paragraphs for spacing, that won't work for you. Is it Charlotte?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. I'm a bit confused now because I think I'm confused with letting and then this space after a
Okay.
paragraph.
Uh-huh.
Because like one of the assignments we had to do, we had it was I think 2B where you have to make the font correct, and then you have to have the same letting as was said in the book, and I just don't understand. Really
Okay,
understand
let me
the
review it.
difference.
I understand the one with the little ads and
Yeah.
the purses and all
Yeah,
that. Okay,
'cause-
so let's talk about it. Okay. So, okay, let me review this. So, let me get rid of these returns here. So you can control the space from this baseline here to this baseline here, right, with letting. There's no return. This is one whole paragraph, this headline. Need more. Let me make it space. I know it doesn't look like a paragraph because it's only 3 words, but here's my paragraph return, which distinguishes it from everything below. And if I want to increase the space between these 2 lines of type in this one paragraph, I would adjust my letting. And I can highlight this, go to my character panel. My letting is the default, 120% of 72 point type. 72 point type is 1 inch high. And the default letting is 86.4. If I want to make this, let's say, 120, bigger, more space, that's letting. If I want to tighten it up, because now I want to make a spoof out of myself, need more space like that, right? And let's do my tracking at -100, right? And let's do my kerning, we'll make it optical just for the sake of it. So now I've tracked it super tight. All the letters are super close together. And if I wanted, let's say it's like this, need more space. I'm changing the column width of my text here. See how need more space is overlapping? That's the letting. That's the letting adjustment. Space after a paragraph addresses a whole paragraph. So it's not going to change the letting here if I add space after this paragraph. If I go to my paragraph panel, upper left paragraph formatting control, and I go to the space after, watch what happens. It's not going to change the letting of the paragraph type. It's changing the letting, the space between my 2 paragraphs.
Yeah, but like in the assignment, I remember you have like the first line, and then I think they hit an enter for the second line, and still we changed the letting.
You did change the letting. Watch,
So, like,
watch here. Let me try this one again. So here's all this type. Probably the default for it. Probably the default is auto letting, which is 12-point type, 14.4. And if you change the letting from this baseline here to this baseline here throughout all the text that's highlighted, watch what happens as I do it. Oops, I meant to make it bigger. See? It doesn't change the spacing after a paragraph, it just changes the leading from line to line in a paragraph. If I want to add space after each paragraph, then I go to my paragraph formatting control,
Yeah.
and I add space after. Let's open your assignment, because I think there's something in that assignment that is confusing. So here we are. We're in this one, right?
Yes.
And we're in, let's not do mine, let's do that one that we open with. And I think it tells you, somebody help me with this. Doesn't it tell you, what does it say? It's like, let's say this is something condensed
Like
bold.
Myriad Pro.
Okay.
regular.
So we go, so here's Myriad Pro, and it's probably bold condensed, and it's probably, I don't know, it won't exceed, it won't make your line break. So if your line breaks, you did it wrong, trust me. It's, okay, so it's 12-point type, let's say. And the leading is default leading, but it probably told you to put it on 12-point leading.
I think it was 10 and 9, but that's it.
This was 10-point leading?
No,
I believe it was 10 and 9.
Or the line below it is? Oh, you mean this first line is 10 and 9, 10 point?
Yeah, 10
I'm
point.
10-point type,
Yeah.
And then
sorry.
9 points.
Okay, 10-point type, 9-point leading,
Yeah.
right? Notice it didn't move because it's telling me what's going to happen on the line below it.
Yeah.
Okay, and then this type was what? It's probably Minion Pro, right?
Minion.
Minion.
Well, not the 65.
Okay, well, we'll take the whole line anyway. It's Minion Pro, and what was it, like 9-point type on what? Who knows? Okay, 11-point leading. Watch the leading's going to open up. Actually, let me make the leading huge. Let me make it 14, because right now the default is 10 something. See how it changed the baseline from here to 14-point leading. And that's not space after. Let me view, go to type, show hidden characters. Here's a paragraph return. And the leading of this one to the leading of that one has been defined. If I want, when you use space after, you use it when you have a whole lot of paragraphs and you want to control the space after them. In something like this, you'll come to know how you want to use it. So, for example, I create, oh, I don't even need to recreate this. I have a client, and let me just set this up like this. We have text, and it's all very predictable. Headlines are, let's say, 36 points. They're optically kerned. I don't mess with tracking. Sometimes I might go to -10 just because it's a little tighter and nicer. And then most of the body copy, and usually space after the headline is usually, let's say, 1/4 of an inch, right? And then all the body copy, so for brochure, for example, might be 10-point type, 14-point leading, and notice it's only what's active here. So let me delete that. Okay. And usually the space after each paragraph isn't so large. It's usually like a 1/16 of an inch. That's what this is. That's usually what it is. Notice the very subtle distinction here.
So it's like you use it when you have like a bunch of text.
You use it when you have a bunch
never
of
use
text.
it when you have like
Like one line, wouldn't bother. One line, you'd say, what's this? What do I want the leading to be? And you might dictate the leading. It's usually for space. There's also, and space before is really the same thing. Interestingly enough, like I can have, on this headline, I have space after, but let me make space after 0. Okay? That's space after 0. This is type that's 36 points and 36-point leading. I can also click anywhere in this paragraph below it, the body copy, and I can go to the paragraph panel and add space before. See, I'm controlling it from that first paragraph. Usually, I end up using space after because it's more predictable for me. So I would know what would be the space after a headline. I would know what would be the space after a paragraph. And it's usually for large blocks of text, not that little teeny thing you did in there. Okay, so let me just review this so you're familiar with the terminology. So if I go to my toolbox and I view in normal, you can see all my margin guides. If I go to view and I go to grids and guides and I want to unlock my guides, let's see, my guides might be unlocked right now. I can probably highlight them and delete them. Did you see how I marqueed them? I drew a little box, made them active. They changed from turquoise to blue. And I'm going to delete them because I want to kind of clean up my space for you, right? The pink thing is just a margin guide. You know that snap to guides, you probably now experienced it. I can drag a ruler guide here from the left and it'll be a vertical ruler. I can also, notice, drag a ruler guide off my page and my ruler guide extends beyond my page. If I take a ruler guide on my page, notice it stops at the trim of my page. Cool, right? You'll find uses for that later. Same thing here. Pull a ruler guide from this one off the edge, it'll hang off the edge. And pull a ruler guide on the page, it stays on the page. So here's my text box and it's going to snap to my guides. If I want to make the E closer, let me blow this up a little. If I want to make the E closer to the N here, I put my cursor in between the two. I go to the character panel, and right here it's on optical kerning, but I can make it tighter by the pull down menu, or I can type any number I want, and my E tucks in closer, which I think looks better. Yeah? And then if I want to space out everything, I can go to Command A, select all, and I can go to my document tracking, and I can make everything space out like crazy. See the difference? That's tracking. It's an overall thing. It's not a letter-to-letter relationship. It's a word or paragraph relationship. So that's tracking. Other controls here in my document, I'm hitting Command Z to undo what I just did. Other controls are obviously here. I can double click on this word and I have a way to make it all caps. I have a way to make it small caps. I have a way to make it subscript, below the line, superscript, above the line, cross out, which you'll probably never use. Let's undo that and undo that, or underline, which you'll never use. Don't use the default underline like this, okay? Now, here's my pet peeves, right? You know I have so many. This is a beautiful font, Times Roman, Times Regular. Please do not take Times Regular, designed thoughtfully by some designer, and make it fatter. Can you just find a font that's called Times Expanded? Because what you're doing is you're stretching the font and it's not how the designer intended it. You're ruining the integrity of the font. Same thing, if you want a shorter font or you want a taller font and you want it to be condensed, don't change, this is the vertical height, vertical scale, don't change it. Find a font that meets your needs, right? There are millions and millions and millions of fonts. Learn the fonts and find the integrity of it. Sometimes, okay, sometimes I'll have to admit, so make sure that your proportions remain at 100%. Sometimes I will admit that you might have a font and for some reason you want to do something to make it look humorous. Obviously, if this headline's Times Roman and you want the word space to look squished like we talked about, like that, and maybe we want to feel like you're totally squeezing out of something and you want to make it look like that, and you're intentionally distorting it for a message, all right, I'll allow you one small indulgence like that because you're not going to go find another font for that line, and that might be when you decide to manipulate it. Okay, does that help you? There's something called styling fonts. Fonts, for example, like if we use the font, let's find this font. Remember that font that I didn't like that I used the other day called Princeton? Princetown. There it is. Notice right here when I use the pull-out menu, this font has only one face to it. There's no bold, there's no italic, there's no filled in, there's no anything. There's just one font. Don't try to style a font, and I don't even know that InDesign will let you turn this to an italic. There used to be a little I button, like in Microsoft Word, there'll be a B or an I for bold or italic. That's called styling a font. But if you style a font like this one, like if I wanted to make it slanted, I mean, I suppose I could do that with my angle tool. But you're styling a font that's not intended to be styled. And if you style it, it will not output properly, and it'll give you a default font called Courier, right? Remember that little Courier video? Because it says, that font doesn't exist. I don't know what you're talking about, a slanted italic Princetown. I don't know what you're talking about at all, so I'm going to pop in Courier because you've blown my mind and I just want to stick a font in there for you. So don't style a font that doesn't belong styled. Who is that there, Tony?
Can you just put it in outlines?
Can you make a font an outline font? Yeah, Tony, this is going to hurt you, isn't it? All this styling. You like styling things, huh? I know you do. Can you make it outline? You can do this. You can highlight the font. Right now it's filled in black. I can fill it with none. I can click on the stroke, and I can apply a stroke to it. I can go to my stroke panel, and I can apply a stroke of a variety of weights. That's 1/4 of a point, so super fine line, right? And I have stroked it, and the default color for me is black. And yes, I recommend not doing it, but yes, you can. You're not really changing the integrity of the font. You would be changing the integrity of font, for example, if you stroked it like this. I mean, you can't even see the font anymore, right? It's not ideal. There are fonts that are stroked, just like this Princetown one. So yes, you can. Yes, the answer is yes, you can. All right? Any other questions? I'm trying to think if there's anything I missed from our lecture. Ascenders, you know, baseline. Baseline would just be, that's your baseline of a letter, right? Counter is right here. You can double click on this to enlarge and look at this as well, and we'll locate the counter, and the counter is right in here inside the O. Oh, let me show you a few things. All right, there's more, but let's see what else I'm missing. So counter, we've talked about that. Descender goes below the baseline. Sans serif and serif, everybody understands that? Stop me. If you have a question, please stop me, okay? And stress, the stress of a letter is, right, let me see where I can find the, show you. The stress is the finest point, usually on the curve of a letter, where it looks like, best way to describe it is where it looks most stressed, where it might break. Does anybody see the word stress on there?
Is that on the O? The second line?
On the O,
On the C on the bottom.
on the C on the bottom. Oh, down here, there you go. Where it's got the greatest weight straining the letter, right? So you start studying these just so you know the terminology. You're not going to be tested on these, but it's fun to be able to know how to talk about it more specifically. And let's see, did I miss anything else here? The X height. Everybody understands the X height, yeah? There's a couple things I do want to tell you. When you create body copy like this, which is 10-point type, the type is right now built with black ink, filled with black ink. If you, for example, decided to make your type green, there's a formula for this green right here. It's made up of 4 colors. It's made up of cyan, which is turquoise, like that, magenta, yellow, and then black. Those are the 4 colors that make color posters and color images that are printed, not on your computer. And so if I were building this letter, this small little letter with green, I would be building it with 75% blue, 5% pink, magenta, red, 100% yellow, and no black. And how that would have to print means it would print by creating little dots, which we'll get into another time. Because if you have a tint of magenta, just 5% of an ink color, that little tint they can't lay down 5% of the color. They have to put down the full color and make little teeny dots out of it. So that means that this type is going to be made up of a bunch of little dots of ink, teeny little dots of ink, compared to this black letter next to it, which is just ink, black ink, to make that letter. And that's something to be aware of when you create a poster or you create something printed and you have small type that you build with color letters. If it's below, let's say 9 point, make it a solid color, not a mix of colors, because it'll cause some problems when things get printed. And let me think of anything else I need to. Yeah.
The height of you said you measure with the letters by the height of the E.
Yeah.
What's the difference between the E height and the X height?
X height is referring to, it's a really good question. X height, right here in our beautifully stroked, let's fill it with black and stroke it with none, there we go. The X height here is referring to the difference between an ascender and a descender. Because a descender extends beyond the X height, downward, descends beyond it, and a ascender ascends above the X
Right, I got
height.
that. So the E and the X look identical in height when they're standing side by side.
Not in uppercase E.
Okay.
We're measuring from the uppercase E.
Okay. I see.
Letter height would be measured from the uppercase E. And it's not a very precise science, to be quite honest with you, because different E's in different fonts will be different heights, to be honest. But that's kind of a formula, a guide. Let me think if I have anything else about type that I want you to be familiar with.
I have a question.
Yeah, again.
I think it's from chapter 3, but I understand what N space and M space are.
Oh,
But I don't quite understand when you're supposed to use them.
oh, that's great. Okay. You guys are great. You guys are asking such fabulous questions. All right, let's look at this. Let's blow things up here. There's a few things you're going to come across, actually might very well be in chapter 3, as a matter of fact. And let me show you this. There's something called an N space, and there's something called an M space, M like Mary, or N. So there's an N space, and there's an M space, okay? And there's a difference. This is, for example, an N dash. That's an N dash. And actually, let me get rid of the rest of the type because I want it to look the same. Okay, and here's, copy that, hit a hard return and paste, Command V. And here's an M dash. Okay, so an M dash, and I'm going to use my tabs just, whoops. I'm going to use my tabs just so you can see this lined up. There. You're not into tabs, but tabs will be a nightmare for you soon, don't worry. Okay, so this is an N dash, and here's an M dash. So the N dash is the width of an N, and the M dash is the width of an M, okay? And an N space is something that doesn't show up. Because usually what we all do, good morning, what we all do is we all end up going like this when we want more spaces, right? And you all do that when you want tabs. You don't do tabs, you just line things up perfectly like that. Well, that's a nightmare too, because if you did a whole book like that and then you changed your point size, right, and then you made everything 12 point, your spacing now becomes a whole different alignment than it was a minute ago, yeah? All right. So, so an M space is not saying 2 spaces and an M space is 3 spaces. What it says is, let me take this space right here, Let me go to type. Let me insert a white space, which means something that's not going to show up, but something I can control. It's a fixed space based on the point size of type I have right now active. And you add an end space right here, and it's really the width of an end dash, basically. So let me just get rid of that so we can align these right now. And get rid of that. And now let me add a M space. So go to type, white space, M space. See the difference? Now if I turn off everything hidden, you know, all the stuff that's supposed to be hidden, see the difference? Does that help y'all? Actually,
that'll hold through for all your formatting.
yeah, so for example, so if I understand what you're asking me, so if I want to add right here an M space in there, I can go to type, insert special character, whoops, insert white space, M space. And I've now controlled the spacing based on my type size. If I add an M space here, right there, because my point size is smaller, it's going to be a different size M space, correct? Because it's in a smaller font size, right? Makes sense. That answer you?
Yeah. Well, when do you use each one?
When do you use it? Well, you have an assignment, actually. I will pull up right now, I think. So you can see it. You might want me to demo it, actually. So let's go to the work folder and see if I have it in there. Yeah, here it comes. This is your assignment where you're going to use it, and I'll show you. Let me open up the student handout. So let me go back to the work folder and hope that it's in here.
But there's no like rule when to use
No.
an M space and when to use it.
No,
Okay.
no. There's, I was looking for the student handout for chapter 3. No, I'll have to download it. What they do is they have you set a block of type, and I'll demo it.
Yeah.
I will demo it. And no, there's no specific rule for
Okay.
it. It's an aesthetic,
All right.
because you're the designer. However, in most cases, you're the designer. However, for your assignments, you're not the designer. You're doing the exact thing we want you to do. Yeah? All right. Any other questions about type or kerning, leading? Those are terms, the terms I'm reviewing for you now are terms you need to know. Leading, tracking, kerning, point size, pica, styling of font. These will be on a test for sure. They may not be on your test like tomorrow. They might be on your test at the final. Anything else? Okay. So just keep in mind, you know, if it's on your lectures, it's probably on your final, actually. If it's on these lectures, it'll be on your final. Roberto, are you just stretching?
I have a question. Can you demo Reedy?
Can I demo Reedy? You
because
bet.
I had a problem with the size.
Got a problem with the size. Okay. Well, and so that leads me to your question of where's John's stuff? Yeah? Okay. Where's John's stuff? John's stuff is easy to find, believe it or not. Let's see. Let's close all my little windows. If you go to the home page in Moodle and you go here, here's the index of lectures, but if you go to past tutorials from past lectures, it's where John stores everything, johnlemon.info, but there's a link. But you kind of have to dig around. These are past lectures, just like we're capturing today, and you have to go way down because I have talked many lectures. And you come here to your assignments, and here's the aids for chapter 2. So, and here's the lecture for the aid to chapter 2, which might be the Reedy ad. But let's see what he's given us. John probably gave us a zipped file. See, an 8 megabyte zip file. John, I don't think I've ever looked at your zip files. And on this computer, it downloads these things into the downloads folder. So I'm opening the downloads folder. Here it is up at the top. I'm going to view it by list because it's easier for me to locate. I'm going to view it right here by date modified. It's easier for me to locate. I'm going to double click on it and see what the heck John gave us. I'm going to drag it to the desktop so I can find it there and open a folder. And John gave me an InDesign document, which looks like it's a CS6 document.
Yes.
And
Well, it might be a CS5.
might be CS5. And I'm going to use my Shift key right now. I'm going to go back to my selection tool, use my Shift key, move the pages around, go to the page panel, see if I'm on page 1. Place your PDF on the student layer, then move it under the template. So you didn't place it for us, did you?
Place what?
Well, right here. Place your PDF. We have to do it? We have to do it.
This is before you hand in your PDF. You
Oh.
take the PDF and place it in this document to compare it to the finished piece.
Okay. Charlotte?
Yeah.
Do you care if I use your example? I downloaded
That's
it this
fine.
morning.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I actually used like everything you showed today to make that, like the tracking, like
Really?
everything. Yeah,
Really?
more than that. 'cause
Made
it
you
would
nuts.
yeah.
Made you, and the
It
book, and
was
you know
so
what?
frustrating.
And here's the difference, okay? Are you ready for me, John? Here's the difference. I will open up your assignments. I will look at them and I will say, oh my God, that's beautiful. All right? I will not put it like this and sandwich it because I want to go out and take a walk with my dog instead. Okay? That's the truth.
I want to do that too.
Yeah, see? But when I look at the work, so let's come to the Reedy ad because, was it your question, Alberto, how to do it? So when it comes to the Reedy ad, it's a tough one because nothing's dictating it. So what John did was, and let me, I guess I have to download that student handout. Let me just click on Finder, go to Command F for Find File. I usually name things student handouts.
They found it was 2.18, 3.18.
Well, and
I don't believe there's a beginning file for reading.
there's no, yeah, there
Just
is.
instructions, aren't there? I think it was blank.
Yeah, I think it was.
Oh, there's no document, you mean?
Yeah.
No, I was looking for the student handout. So this means I have to now go to Cengage Brain, but Mark doesn't have to because he's got these all loaded on his computer, right? He says, I do. My suggestion is, because I'm not a patient person, so I sat down one day, I loaded all these artwork and resources and all these student handouts, and I just went to them because I don't want to keep doing it. So I put all of them for like the next 6 months on my computer. So I go to Rydberg, I find the book, I go to access the free stuff. We're in chapter 2. I use the pull down menu to chapter 2. I know I have the artwork and resources folder already on the computer, but I don't have the handout. So I'm going to open the handout as a PDF. And the way these computers are set up is they usually default to open them in the web page. I suggest you save the file. This will open it in Acrobat Professional for me. So it's downloading it for me, and it'll launch it in Acrobat Professional. And I'm going to save it on the desktop. I'm going to save it as, I'm going to call it Chapter 2. Actually, I'll put it in that folder. And I'm going to put it in the Chapter 2 Artwork and Resources folder and save it so I know where to locate it. And I'm also going to save it on the desktop so I don't swim around over it for a while. Okay, and then I'm going to hit Command 0 to make it fit in the page. And I'm going to notice what page the Reedy ad is on, okay? So here's the Reedy ad right here. Here's the finished product right there. And it's on page 9, okay? Just store that in your memory. So now I'm in an InDesign document, not John's. We're closing up John's for the moment. We're closing up this for a moment. Closing up that. We're going to make a new document because it doesn't tell you the document size. If I were you, didn't we measure it the other day? And didn't we decide it was 2 inches by 3 inches? Okay. So I have no trouble with you doing this. As a matter of fact, I would love if you did this. You may as well make a new document, turn off facing pages, make it 3 inches wide, make it 2 inches tall. Who hasn't done this assignment? Okay. Make it 2 inches tall, and here's my little square. It's 2 inches. It's got a huge margin. Let me just get rid of this margin. Let me make the margin super small. So I can go to layout and change my margin right now. And notice this chain link is selected, which means it's going to affect all of the measurements around. And I'm going to make my margin 1/8 of an inch. And there we go. And what I can do, we haven't gone over layers yet. And you don't get into layers until like chapter 7. But there's no, layers is not really brain surgery. You can go to Window, locate layers, regardless of what work mode you're in, workspace. And you can add a layer by going down here and creating a new layer, or you can create a new layer by this pull-out menu here, new layer. And let's just call this, I'll call it a guide, because that's what we'll put our add-on for guide. And you move layers just by dragging. You know, kind of talk out loud, right? What do I want to do? So this is also turns on and off a layer, the eye. I can lock a layer so I don't impact that one. And right here on guide, how do you place the graphic for this ad? I would go to File, I'd go to Place. I'm going to locate that PDF document I put on the desktop. Remember it was on page 9. Oops, I don't want to do that. Did it wrong. I'm going to go back to my selection tool and undo this. Again, I want to go to File, Place. Let me slow myself down. On this page, this is the key. This is where you run into trouble. Click on Show Import Options. That'll let you, because it's like a 12-page PDF file, that'll let you select one of the pages. Otherwise, it's just going to put in page 1 for you. So Show Import Options, locate the file you want to place, open it. Now I get to preview it. Now I can scroll through them to find the Reedy ad, which will be page 9, by the way. Here it is, page 9. Yeah, John?
It's a good idea to unclick replace selected object unless you really mean it, because oftentimes I'll leave that clicked and I'll have something inadvertently selected that goes in there.
And it disappears, right? Okay, you'll know it when it happens. And so now it will place the previewed page, page 9, or I can just click range and say page 9, okay? Either one. And my cursor's gonna, I say okay, my cursor's gonna load with a graphic, and it's gonna be way too huge for the page because my page was 2 by 3 inches, remember that? So let's see what happens to me. So I click and it's way too big for the page. So I'm just gonna kind of reduce stuff here and move it. I'm just pulling the corner of this till I can get my final ad here. Notice I'm cropping it because I'm pulling the corner because I really just want this thing down here. Then somebody asked me this in an email. So I'm now hitting my little arrows just to position this. And you know what? We measured pretty clearly what size it was, right? Got to give me credit. Good job, right? Yeah, John.
Be careful on some of the other assignments if you're going to place this because they're not necessarily to size.
That's accurate.
Although everything in my template is to size. So if you pull the PDF of this out of my template,
Yeah.
you could place it.
See, John takes care of you, unlike me who just throws you to the wolves. Yeah, Susan?
Is it okay if you just, or is it, I guess it's a little archaic, just to print it and have it side by side?
That's my preference.
It is?
It is.
Oh, okay, good.
Yes. My preference is that you never do this. My preference is that you never create a template like this. Because when I graded Charlotte's work, okay, this is what I want to show you. So I'm going to place this. Then somebody sent me an email, I don't remember who it was, who said, oh my gosh, I placed this graphic, and I'm going to make this height of this 2 inches. There. Somebody said, I placed the graphic and it looks horrible, right? This looks horrible, doesn't it? That's because when you place a graphic in InDesign, even if it's linked properly, the default for it is that it has a display performance of low quality because it doesn't want to use up your memory. It says, I'm going to put the image there. It's not the real image. It's just what I remember the real image to look like because the real image is over there, right? This is a placed PDF. It's not embedded. It's just placed. So it's remembering what it looks like. If I want to make this high resolution, I make it active, which it is. I go to Object, Display Performance, and we're in typical display. Here's fast display. Nada. Nothing there. That's fast display. Here's typical. And here is, whoops, Object. Here's high quality. And now it's going to be pretty. That's why they look bad. But you'll know if it's not okay. You'd have a red stop sign in the corner, which means your link is bad. And if you have a bad link, it'll never get pretty. It'll always look bad because you have a bad link. Okay, so if you look at my layer panel, here's my guide, right? And I'm going to lock it. And I'm going to do the same thing on my layer, which is what John's suggesting that you do. I'm going to call this Charlotte because I'm going to place Charlotte's art and we're going to find out if Charlotte did a good job or not. I've already graded Charlotte's work. She got 100%. I looked at it this morning, I sat down, I started looking who submitted what, and I looked at it and I said, you know, nice work. We're in trouble if I caught something on this now, right? Okay. All right. So now I'm going to go to File and I'm going to place Charlotte's document. And it's probably in the Downloads folder. So I got to go locate the Downloads. And Charlotte, what'd you call it? Oh, that's you, right there. And I have import options. And John was telling you not to have this on. And actually, I always leave it on. But
We don't have anything selected.
don't have anything selected, but we'll unselect it for the moment. And we'll find Charlotte's document, and we'll get to scroll through her work. She got 100% because first thing, here's her grade sheet. Good for you. Nice work. Then she did all of the assignments, and I am not grading all her assignments, although I did look at each and every one of them. And I'm only grading the 2, but I looked at them, and here's her markup, which looked good. I looked at this because I demoed it for you. This one's a cakewalk, right? Easy. And this one's a little harder, yeah, but worth knowing. And then here's her Reedy ad, and that's what I want to place. So I'm going to place her Reedy ad right here, and it's going on the layer called Charlotte because the bottom layer is locked. And again, we're going to run into trouble. So we're going to see how she did, actually. This is the moment of truth. Did you place it in John's template?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, you did? Holy cow. Okay. So we're gonna try and position it perfectly for her. Oh my.
Wow.
Wow, you're insane.
I
Okay.
know it took me.
Yeah. Okay, and we'll go to Object Display Performance and make it pretty. Okay. So it's not perfect. We found a flaw, right? Yeah. But it's about as perfect as one could be. And the reason it's never going to be perfect is because you might have a different version of the exact same font that John had when he made his. Or a different, the books. Or you might have a different version of the books or something. But yours is insane. It's flawless. So you adjusted your kerning. Yeah, okay. It's okay, it's not picked up in my video. Yes, exactly, kerning, point size. And where it said like 10-point type, you probably made it 10.1, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, insane. And so what I would do is this, to tell you
So
the
I
truth.
don't need to do that.
For John, probably yes. For Vicki, probably no. I know we're giving you a mixed message, but this is what I did. I did not measure it like this. This is what I did. Actually, let me put it back. And I can turn off the guide, right? So this is Charlotte's. And the things I will notice, I will tell you what I will notice. Now, remember, I have been doing this 1,012 years. So my eye will immediately see something. And here's the flaws that I see. So I can go to your ad. Actually, let me go to your ad. I'm going to go to yours because I'm going to cheat. And I'm going to go to my page panel right now, drag down a new page. I'm going to come back here. I'm going to click on your ad, and I'm going to hold the control button and go, oh, I hope I'm on the right layer. Yeah, I am. Okay. I don't know why that's not, oh, I see why. I'm on the wrong thing. Okay, I'm going to go to, oh, this is making me nuts. Let's just try it this way. We're going to go to Edit, and we want to go to Edit Original, and it's going to open up your PDF for me, hopefully in Acrobat Professional. And I'm going to go down to your page, and John does have a mantra. What did you say?
It doesn't have to be right, it just has to look right.
Right. Right. Yeah, he also has a mantra that you should never have to type anything twice. So therefore, I'm stealing your type. I'm in Acrobat Professional. I went to the cursor. I highlighted your text, right? Click and drag. I'm hitting Command-C for copy. Everybody knows that. I'm going to go back to my little InDesign document. I'm going to go to my new document here. I'm going to go to my type tool. I'm going to click and drag from corner to corner a type box. I'm going to go to Command-V and paste your text. Because I'm lazy, I don't want to do it, okay? And I'm going to zoom smaller. I'm going to zoom out. Yeah, John?
You can run into odd characters doing that. You have to be careful. You have to look at what you've done because you might get some ASCII character that InDesign doesn't recognize when
Right.
you do that.
Okay. And actually John, I think, will agree that he would grade this just like I'm going to show you now, which is this. First thing I would do is I would make this text box. Everybody in here said they did it, right? But I'm going to show you how I'm evaluating you so you get an idea, right? Is it helpful what I'm doing now? Yes, okay. I just want to be able to show you other things so we don't get stuck in this corner. But what I would first do is I would say, okay, take the box, find a stroke. What's the stroke? It's dots. I don't know. Is it dotted or?
Japanese 5.
Okay, Japanese. There you go. 5 points. You guys did do this assignment. There it is. Then I'm going to look and I'm going to say how much inset is my text and is the space here on the top the same as the space on the bottom, and all my type is aligned in center text. So I'm going to take all my, so I'm going to go to Object Text Frames right now, and I don't know what they tell you to do, but this is how I intuit it, and I'm going to center it vertically because that's what it is. All right, and then I'm going to take all my text, I'm going to select everything, Command A, and I'm going to go to my paragraph panel and I'm going to center my text. And then I don't know the font. Did they tell you the font?
Yeah.
Which was what, Minion?
Oh, I don't remember.
Does anybody remember?
Minion Pro.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to go to my character panel and I'm going to change everything to Minion Pro Bold right now. Only because if I'm changing one, I'll change them all. And then I'm going to take the first word, and I bet it doesn't tell me the size, does it? But I'm going to look. And I'm going to say, oh, that's pretty good. Looks a little big. And then my guess is it's probably 36 point. That would be my guess. And then I'm going to assume that this is bold italic.
Yeah.
Yeah? All right, so now I'm going to take bold and I'm going to make it bold italic. And it's a little bigger than the default of 12. And the baseline from here is different than the baseline to here. Actually, let me work this. Oh, I can't do that. Let me change my margin guides because I think the pink is confusing. There. Now I have no margins. All right. And, you know, even if you put this side by side, you get the idea of it. But right now I'm going to take florists and greenhouses, and I'm going to increase my leading till I think it's about what I think it looks like. And I'm going to opt for 24 point. And I don't know if it tells you this. And I see you have a letter space there, but I see you have no space here. So I'm going to add a letter space there. And I'm going to make the type bigger, which looks like it's maybe 14 point type, maybe 18.
It's like the end. The end is really big.
this ampersand is
Yeah.
probably really, really big. So I'm going to do that. Because now, if I'm looking at that and you've designed this and I'm saying, okay, so you made the type size bigger, it's about the same size, it's the same weight, it's bold, it's italic, it's bold, it's italic, it's pretty close. Then here, these are all centered. I'm going to highlight these 3 lines of type because they are handled the same way. And they're smaller. They're probably 10-point type or 9-point type, let's say. And they're probably like 11-point leading. And then I'm going to come to this line of type. And actually, I'm just going to eyedrop this right here because I should have made it that the same. And it's active, and I'm going to make it italic. And this should be regular, not bold. What happens is students will forget the weight of the type. They may have made the whole thing bold, and they forget that some is regular weight and some isn't. And then I'm going to look and say, okay, that's pretty good. And then here I'm going to notice that this is regular, not bold, it's regular. And it's small caps, not all uppercase, differentiating it. Does everybody understand the difference between small caps and uppercase? Does anybody not understand that? I can explain it. Okay. So small cap means the initial capital letter, the initial uppercase letter, is taller than all the rest. And that's called small caps. And here's the difference. Here's all caps right there. See? And usually somebody forgets that, so they get in trouble there. And then what I notice here is there's probably a little more space after hanging baskets before family owned. So I would highlight this and I would increase the leading maybe 1 point. And then I would notice that this leading here is tighter. So I'd highlight those 2 lines and tighten up the leading because it's probably 12-point. And then I'd notice the leading between family owned and operated is bigger down to open. So I probably, this might be where I personally would lean towards space before because it's easier for me. But I can just, oops, I don't want to change the point size. I can increase the leading, let's say a couple. And then I'd probably select the whole ad, Command A, and I'd always opt for optical kerning. That generally gets me where I need to go. And I would look at that and I'd say, is anything touching? So when I'm grading this, I'd say, this looks like too much leading. So I'd highlight it and tighten it. And I'd say this might be a little bit tighter leading. So actually what it means is I just take this one and make it a little tighter like that. And when I look at it, I'd say, did she make it bold? Is that bold italic? Is that a bigger ampersand? Does it come up the way it should for the Reedy ad? Is everything aligned properly? And I'm thinking that John and I would both look at this, nothing's touching our frame and border, and we'd be happy.
I'd give it a 0
Why?
because the border's wrong.
Oh, I wasn't getting to that yet.
Okay.
What about my type though?
Beautiful.
Beautiful type, okay. All right, so what John's talking about, which is a 0, and John's a black and white. It's either 100% or it's 0, because he wants you to all get 100%. So there's something that you may not have learned yet, which is this. Most people wouldn't have created this on a 2x3 page. Did anybody do that? Okay. Most of them created it like this. Most of you created it, let me make a new page. Let me duplicate the page. I dragged it to the layer panel and it duplicated the page. Most of you did this. There's a page tool, which you haven't learned yet, right here. And I can click on that page and I can make this a letter size page. And so most of you just did this. And John would now give you 100% because he wouldn't know.
Actually, that's interesting. I measure every one of them.
Do you?
Because one of the biggest mistakes I get is wrong size dots. Now, it might not matter in a lot of situations, but it would in a newspaper ad because it's got to be on the money.
Right.
So that's
So-
the one time I do that
Do you? Okay.
with Reedy.
John's tough, right? Told you. So what you do here is this. There's a text box here, and my text box should be 3 inches wide by 2 inches tall. And it should be at the 0, 0 coordinate. We haven't gotten to that yet. Which means it absolutely fits perfectly. And now it would work. It's in the right location. But the other thing is, watch this. When you create strokes, there's this, if I make this box active, when you create strokes, there's align the stroke to center, align the stroke to the inside of the box, and align the stroke to the outside. Watch what happens when I align it to the outside of my box. It won't print properly. It'll get cut off. Okay? And that's what John's watching for you. It seems to work fine if you align it to the center on this one. Mark, did you have a question? Did your hand go up, or Alberto?
I found this 2.18 and 3.18,
Okay.
and I go with another perspective.
Okay. Did you measure it?
We measure,
Okay.
but I
Then
don't know.
then I will honor that.
I don't show this.
Okay. So here's Charlotte. Let me show you Charlotte's work, and I'll tell you what I looked at. It's okay, Charlotte? Is this your work? Yeah, okay. So here's what I did. She did all the work. She scored it, which is really important. Here's where you just change the point size of the type, right? Some font, correct?
Yeah, you make it.
Right. Here, this is where you fall into problems. Some of you, when you make mistakes here, your leading is incorrect, or this line isn't bold, or you do everything right, but that 75% is at 9 point and not at, 24 point or whatever it is. Or here, you forget to make that one italic and you make it the same as GIF wrap. And John would give you a 0 on that. And because there's 2 assignments that we grade, you would only get a 50% accuracy for your assignment.
So we were supposed to actually put in our other assignments even though you're not going to grade
If
them.
you do them, show us, because I raised my eyebrows and I said, that's so awesome. Charlotte did all of her assignments. I'm so happy to see that. Because it lets me know you're working the book hard. It also lets me know you're putting more time in, which is important. I know this is a very time-consuming class. And so that was that assignment, and I looked at these, and none of her type is touching the edges, which was an important part of that assignment. And she got all of her alignments. And then this one, she has fills and strokes, which is great. This one is selecting the accurate colors and strokes and fills and so forth, and that's great. And then because this is sitting on an 8.5 by 11 page, John will take out his ruler and measure it, or he will hit Command R, and he will roll this up here to see if it's about 3 inches by 2 inches, right? So you do.
I believe it's supposed to be 2 by 3 inches.
But I mean, how do you measure it? You print them,
You know,
or you just put them on your template?
actually, I put it in the template because Acrobat ceased to work on my machine.
Okay. Okay. But anyway, so I looked at this and I looked at all of the proportions, and the only flaw I see in this is that probably you should have a space between the T and the ampersand.
Yeah.
And I took my dog for a walk instead. Okay. And then here's your final. And the fact that I saw that you did all your work here was incredibly impressive for me, which was great. Does that help you understand how things are being assessed? Are there questions about any of that? All right. So we have 20 minutes. I can either release you to work on stuff yourself, and I can demo more come Wednesday, which is probably, I think, what we should do, unless there's something burning inside you that you want me to show you, chapter 3. Anybody got a comment for chapter 3, or you just want to have 20 minutes to work on things? And you have a choice. It's a democracy right now.
Can I go home too and do it at home?
Yes, it's that kind of democracy today. Yeah. So, done? We're done? All right. Stopping the video.